So you've probably already heard of the brand new Canon RF 45mm f1.2 STM lens. And that's because a lot of the reviews have been coming out have been saying, wow, this lens is amazing, it's so affordable, which it absolutely is, and how are you ever going to get an f1.2 aperture at that price? Isn't that cool? But in a lot of ways that does sound too good to be true, and I certainly want to test it out today because I think this lens is going to have some issues that are really important to understand whether it still makes sense for you to put in your camera bag. I'm Chris Niccolls, this is PetaPixel, this is a Canadian winter. You know, guys, cameras aren't getting any cheaper, and if you're buying in the United States of America, state sales tax can take a big chunk out of your purchasing power. So consider going to B&H Photo and buying your camera gear there with the B&H Photo Payboo Credit Card, because you'll pay the sales tax, but then they will give that money back to you, and that's really going to help the bottom line and make that overall cost cheaper. Or you have another option. It won't save you the sales tax, but it will let you finance your purchase over either 6 months or a year, and this can really help out to spread the cost over the next year and make it more affordable for you. Just remember that a Payboo credit card is still a credit card, and you want to be responsible, and there is an approval process. It's not automatic, so you do have to apply. So check the info here. You can see it right now. Go to bhphoto/Payboo and get all the information you need before going through the approval process. These Payboo accounts are brought to you by Comenity Capital Bank. So Canada, in wintertime, you guys get to appreciate this for the next, half a year. And this is what happens. We get these big dumps of snow, and in some ways it can be very beautiful, right? Like everything's sort of white. We got soft sort of cloudy light here today and stuff. Might look nice, but it's limited in what you can shoot. And so I'm happy that I was actually able to get out yesterday before the snow. There was a Christmas market, shot from daylight until nighttime, and that'll give me a really good opportunity to show off things like shallow depth of field and bokeh, specular highlights, that kind of stuff. But I also do want to test this lens as just a normal walk around lens, because 45mm is a very general purpose kind of focal range, and having the extra light can be handy in certain situations. Is it going to function well like that? These are questions that I want to answer, but before that, I really want to get into handling. It's pretty quick. Let's talk about that. So how is it to handle this lens in just like a walk around casual situation? Well, it's actually quite pleasant. Physically, it's going to be a little bit bulbous because of that f1.2 aperture, and it gives us a 67mm filter thread here in the front, but it only weighs 346 grams, so it's just a joy to carry around. We got some nice control surfaces here too, a customizable control ring, knurled well, but it's always going to make that noise. It's always going to have that click to it. Well damped manual focus ring, really smooth to turn, and I can just select autofocus, manual focus right there on the lens. We're not going to get image stabilization or anything like that. There's no other controls on here, but that's okay. That bright aperture should give us fairly fast shutter speeds in low light situations, especially if you're using a body with IBIS, you're going to have no problems at all. But I do also want to mention that because this lens is as affordable as it is, there are a couple of features missing. So first off, we do not have any sort of weather sealing. There's no rubber ring or anything around that lens mount, so you don't want to really be making a habit of getting this wet. And Canon is not going to include a hood with this lens. You actually have to buy that as an optional accessory, and that's unfortunate because, well, let's talk about flare next. When you're shooting towards bright light sources like the sun there, of course, flare can be an issue. So how does this lens handle it? Well, I would like to have a hood just to give me a little bit more contrast, but actually the coatings are doing a really good job. You can see we're still not losing that much contrast shooting towards bright light sources, and we're not getting that much ghosting. Certainly you can see a little bit here. It does get worse when you stop the aperture down. That's pretty typical, but I would say flare is fairly well controlled here. You'll see it, but it's not obnoxious. Another way to keep the cost down on a lens is to put a fairly basic autofocusing motor in it. And this has just a classic Canon STM motor. We've seen this a lot in their more affordable glass. And honestly, it does a great job of focusing the lens quickly. From near to far, I'm not having any issues. It's quick, it's snappy, it's tracking subjects well, it's tracking eyes well. So I'm happy with that. I do detect a little bit of a hum, like just a bit of a noise. I think we're spoiled nowadays though with focusing motors being so silent or near silent, that you actually do notice the sound here, but I don't think it would cause any major issues in any situation. So far it sounds like this is a pretty handy lens for a really good price, but there are going to be some compromises that start to rear their ugly head. And one of the ugliest is when it comes to LoCA, which is longitudinal chromatic aberration. This is where you get color fringing in the foreground and background autofocus areas, and if you see it, it's really hard to get rid of in post. Now you can shoot this lens stop down to eliminate the LoCA that you'll see, but this is a lens meant to shoot at f1.2 and f1.4 and f1.8, you know, these bright apertures, and unfortunately you can see that we do get a fair amount of that pink-green split in the autofocus areas. And you're not just going to see this on a test chart, you're going to see this with specular highlights, you're going to see it with tree branches at distance that are out of focus and stuff. Like, it just shows up as a very colorful situation. And again, as I say, it is difficult to get rid of in post, so keep that in mind. So we've talked about how just crappy the weather is today. This is like my least favorite light in wintertime because like the sun's basically obscured, just flat light, fill everywhere. And so we get detail, but we don't get any sort of interest or directionality. So I'm going to be using the Westcott FJ400 flash here through this rapid box switch 2x3. I'm going to feather it a little bit so just the edge of the softbox is kissing Jordan's face. And yeah, kissing your face, absolutely. This is intimate. This is wonderful. It's art. And I definitely need that 400 watt power. I've got this cranked up pretty high. I'm almost at max power because I want to shoot this lens at f1.2 and really just accentuate his beautiful blue eyes. And by shooting at that wide aperture, I need to cut a whole bunch of light, otherwise it's going to overexpose. So 6-stop ND, I need that power to push through that 6-stop ND and still give me proper exposure. But before we do that, let's just do a before. I'll turn off the transmitter here, Jordan. Give me your nicest before here. Yeah, there you go. Just like an ad. You're so grumpy. Yeah, nice exposure, but just flat. No interest. Let's turn the flash on and let's try that again. Here we go. Jordan, you ready to be not too happy? Not too happy. Just, you know, but yeah, there you go. Beauty, looks great. So this is a fantastic way to just have the power to go through a strong ND, even with wide aperture lenses, and really give some interest to an otherwise very flat day. Go to fjwestcott.com, check this out for yourself, or click the link in the description below. That is why they are PetaPixel's preferred lighting gear partner. So an f1.2 lens, this is the key thing here, right? Shallow depth of field. Does this lens have nice bokeh? I really wanted to test it in a lower light situation with lots of highlights, so the Christmas market I think worked out perfectly. And first, as you can see, beautiful cat's eye effect, right? When you're shooting wide open, you're just getting those nice swirls. I really like the look of it. The specular highlights go large. They make colorful backgrounds. It's very pretty. You will also notice it's quite clean, and I was really impressed by that. I'm not seeing any onion rings, but there is a significant soap bubble effect. As we stop the lens down, those highlights get a little bit more rounded. You know, we're losing some of that cat's eye look. I still think they look really nice, but overall bokeh, I mean, really shallow depth of field. It's beautiful, but there is a touch of harshness to it. You know, I still think this is a really nice lens for when you want those really soft, colorful backgrounds. But when I'm shooting in more full daylight situations, I do find that those backgrounds can look just a little bit distracting, a little bit frenetic, but that's a minor gripe. Overall, I was actually really impressed with how nice this lens looks when shooting at these wider apertures. So can an affordable lens be sharp, especially one that has a maximum aperture of f1.2, which is largely unheard of at this price? You know, my doubts come from the fact that we see a lot of manufacturers make 50mm f1.4 lenses that are fairly low cost, but you know, you have compromises at f1.4. Well, how is this gonna stand up? My expectations were low, and I think that's why I was actually so impressed. So I do wanna give you guys context. I shot these test charts at f1.2, then f1.8, and then f2.8. We don't normally do that, but I just wanted to see the progression from the widest aperture to something tighter, a little bit more detailed. Taking a look at the center of our test chart here, at f1.2, yeah, it's actually pretty sharp. You know, contrast is maybe a little bit low, but it's not as bad as I thought. You can see here compared to f1.8, we are getting a little bit more contrast, but the sharpness is basically already there. Then when we stop down to f2.8 in the center, you can see things do tighten up a little bit more, but I would happily shoot this lens wide open in a lot of situations in the center. When we go to the corners, it is a different story here. Shooting at f1.2, I didn't find the corners good at all. I mean, just lots of blur, not sharp at all, low contrast. Even stopping down to f1.8, I don't notice much improvement. Things look pretty mushy and pretty blurry. And even at f2.8, I really don't notice that much improvement. There's some, but it's still not getting us there. So I think what Canon's really done is they've designed a lens with the intention that it'll be sharp, wide open in the center of the image, where yeah, most people are going to use this lens at the expense of some corner detail. And in most situations, you're going to get away with that. I mean, if I'm doing single portraits, I'm not putting my subjects to the far edges or anything like that. But what about like group shots, family shots? Well, then you might really need to stop down that lens to get those corners to sharpen up. You know, any sort of landscape stuff or general purpose stuff, again, I'm shooting a lot of the stuff out here today, closing down the aperture a bit more because I don't want to get those weird blurry corners. So just keep that in mind. Happily shoot this lens wide open. Just watch out for those corners. So having tested the lens for myself, it looks like I agree with the general consensus, which is that Canon has made an impressive optic with a usable f1.2 aperture for a very decent price. Now, we do still have to keep some context here. I mean, if you're gonna buy a hood, and certainly I would also add an ND filter to that cost because you can't shoot f1.2 on bright days, forget it. You're gonna want at least a 3-stop for any time you wanna shoot shallow depth of field on brighter conditions. Factor that into the cost, but still, around $470 USD for the base lens is pretty impressive. The optical characteristics and compromises weren't as bad as I thought they would be. Other than LoCA, this lens actually performs pretty well, and I think it works brilliantly for what people are going to want to use it for. A specialized, low light, shallow depth of field lens, you know, family portraits and stuff like that, or just anytime you want to blow the background out nice and soft. This lens actually does that really well. I also think that this lens is really interesting because, you know, this year especially, we're reviewing a lot of third-party stuff out of Asia, lots of Korean and Chinese lenses, and they really do specialize in making some fast prime lenses for very good prices. It's very appealing to the crowd, and for the most part, I've enjoyed a lot of those lenses, but I will say they often have optical quirks, they often have a lot of character, and they do sometimes straight out have some issues with things like flare and LoCA as well. Can you get those for Canon RF mount? Not really. So this is actually a really smart play by Canon to start making their own affordable optics, show that they can do that and compete. And honestly, this was fairly quirk-free with some exceptions. So I really hope that we're going to see other focal lengths from Canon with fast apertures at similar prices. I think that'd be a really smart move. All right, guys, as always, I hope you enjoy the way that we review lenses and that you got good information out of this. Are you a PetaPixel.com member yet? Because if not, I would highly recommend it. $3 a month, $30 a year. You can peruse the website without seeing any of those ads. There's lots of great writers and lots of great content on there that you do not want to miss. As well, you get big discounts at places like KH.com or, you know, off the Moment store, you get cash back, or even off our own merch store. And you can also peruse sample galleries, including this lens, and see JPEGs and RAWs for yourself exclusively if you're a member. And do leave your feedback in the comments below. We might even answer some of that feedback on our podcast. Just check out the PetaPixel podcast on this exact same channel or all your favorite podcasting apps. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.